In fantasy football, drafting a league winner can increase your odds of winning your league by a great amount, which I know is a shocker, right? Drafting a league winner will help you win your league. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down 10 different players who I think have the upside to win you your league in 2023 fantasy football. But before we can get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below while you're down there. Whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into top 10 league winners that you need on your team in 2023 fantasy football. We begin with my first league winner, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions, current underdog ADP wide receiver 8 at pick 13.7. Last year, Amon-Ra was the wide receiver 7 in PPR and the wide receiver 11 in PPR points per game. There were actually some games last year where he didn't play 60+% of the snaps. In that 14 games where he did play 60+% of the snaps, he was the wide receiver 9 in PPR points per game. He played in 16 games last season, totaling 146 targets, 9.1 per game, number 8 at wide receiver, 106 receptions, 6.6 per game, number 5, 1,161 receiving yards, 72.6 per game, number 10, and 6 total touchdowns, number 20 at wide receiver. This is a Detroit Lions offense that I fully expect to take an even further leap up than what they had last season. This was a team that turned heads last season. There were a lot of people that were nervous about Amon-Ra St. Brown entering the 2022 fantasy football season. This man was on fire NBA Jam style towards the end of the 2021 season, but a lot of players thought that maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown was a one-hit wonder, right? Maybe he only had a couple of good games. Maybe he's not that guy. It was just a fugazi end of the season. Well, obviously, when I talk about those numbers, when you look at the numbers, Amon-Ra St. Brown is that guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a legitimate number 1 threat in the National Football League with the upside, in my opinion, to be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. I know a lot of people love to throw stones at Jared Goff, but Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked 9th in target accuracy in the National Football League. He also ranked 15th in true catch rate. I believe that Amon-Ra St. Brown is the perfect amalgamation, the perfect combination of safety as well as upside. He is incredibly safe because he is going to see 9, 10, maybe even 11 targets game in and game out. They don't really have a lot of weapons around Amon-Ra, especially early on in the season when Jameson Williams is suspended. In those games, it wouldn't shock me if Amon-Ra averaged 12 plus targets per game. And he also has the extreme upside of maybe those targets lead to more touchdowns. He only scored 6 total touchdowns last year. The touchdown number in the NFL, we all know, is not sticky. Amon-Ra St. Brown could score 6 touchdowns last year and score 15 touchdowns this season. Is that very likely to happen? Of course not, but the upside is there for maybe he scores 8, 9, or 10 touchdowns, and that helps him crack the top 5. Again, I want pieces of this Detroit Lions offense. I am excited about Jared Goff. I'm excited about Dan Campbell, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be biting people's kneecaps off. Moving now to the number 2 league winner, we have Calvin Ridley, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars, current underdog ADP wide receiver 15 at pick 27.4. Now, I know early on in the offseason, a lot of people were kind of tiptoeing around the idea of Calvin Ridley. They were nervous about the fact that maybe it took him some games in 2023. He was going to be rusty, this, that, and the other thing. But every single fucking clip I see out of training camp, this guy looks like he never even left. This guy looks like the clear number 1 wide receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. This is an offense that after they got the Urban Meyer stink off of them, they added Doug Peterson as the head coach. Trevor Lawrence went from looking like a generational fucking bust, Jamarcus Russell style, into turning into that quarterback that we all thought he would be coming out of Clemson. And last year, he didn't have any weapons that were like Calvin Ridley. Now, I know Christian Kirk had a great year. Zay Jones looked good. I get that. But Calvin Ridley is miles ahead in skill set of Christian Kirk as well as Zay Jones. So if we look at Calvin Ridley's stats, 2021, he only plays in 5 games, so we're going to go even further back to the future, hop in the DeLorean, and go back to 2020 to a closer representation in 2020 to what we could see on a full season. He was the wide receiver 5 that year, and the wide receiver 4 in PPR points per game with Julio Jones playing. 15 games played in 2020, 143 targets, 9.5 per game, number 7, 90 receptions, 6 per game, number 11, 1,374 receiving yards, 91.6 per game, number 4, almost 100 yards per game, 9 total touchdowns, 9th. And in terms of efficiency, this dude was bending defenses over. He was 7th in yards per route run, 9th in fantasy points per route run, 21st in target separation. Now, he did have a case of the dropsies, Deontay Johnson style. He had 9 drops in that season, 2020. But again, that's nothing that I will worry about. What I like about Calvin Ridley is the skill that he possesses in an offense that I expect to be elite in 2023. And his ADP right now is rapidly rising. On Underdog, this guy might end up being a final or second to final pick in the second round of fantasy drafts. This guy is legit. I believe he still has all of that skill, and I think Calvin Ridley is going to smash Hulk style in 2023. Moving next, we got Josh Jacobs, running back of the Las Vegas Raiders. Current Underdog ADP running back 10 at pick 31.4. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. So Jacobs was the RB3 in PPR last year and the running back 3 in PPR points per game. I know there are going to be people right now that are full-on fading Josh Jacobs because they are worried about the fact that he is going to hold out. Now, I worried about Saquon early on, thinking Saquon was going to maybe hold out. They have this Zoom meeting, but no, he folds easily. Now, I know Josh Jacobs might be a little harder in his ways, but ultimately, once we get to week 1, it is going to be show up or shut up for Josh Jacobs, and I think he wants the money, right? Who wouldn't want all that money of the franchise tag? Sure, it sucks. It sucks that the Raiders won't give him a contract, but I would be shocked, full-on perplexed if Josh Jacobs wasn't starting week 1 for this team, and when he starts, he is the clear workhorse. Going into last season, I worried Josh McDaniels has this kind of rhetoric around him about being a running back by committee guy. That just wasn't the case at all. Jacobs was number 2 in carries. He was first in rushing yards with 1,653. He was top 12 in targets as well as receptions, top 10 in receiving yards, ranking 8th with 400, and he scored 12 total touchdowns, 6th at running back, all doing so while being pretty efficient. He was 11th in juke rate, and he was 1st in yards created. I understand that this Raiders offense isn't the big bad fucking wolf with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. But they weren't the big bad wolf either when Derek Carr or Jarrett Stidham was under center. They still have Devontae Adams. They have an offensive line that is serviceable enough for Josh Jacobs to feast like Ezekiel Elliott does during Thanksgiving dinner. I am all aboard the Josh Jacobs train. I don't even worry in the slightest about him holding out. I think he is going to be out there week 1. It might still take some time, right? You might get a little bit sweaty. You might start sweating a little bit as we get deeper into August, but I think ultimately, when push comes to shove, Josh Jacobs will show up. At number 4, we have Lamar Jackson, quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. Underdog ADP, quarterback 4 at pick 34.8. Last year, he was the quarterback 14, but that's only because he played in 12 games. He was the quarterback 6 in points per game, tied with Lamar Jackson. He had 326 passing attempts, 25th at quarterback, 27.2 per game, 2,242 passing yards, 186.8 per game, number 26, 17 passing touchdowns at a 5.2% rate, 16th, 7 interceptions, 24th, but obviously where you make your money, the money maker for Lamar Jackson isn't his arm. Now people will make fun of him. Oh my God, Lamar Jackson's a running back, this, that, and the other thing. Well, based upon the current NFL landscape, teams aren't paying running backs, and Lamar Jackson got a hefty check. One of those checks that they give you when you win the fucking lottery. 112 carries. Again, this is only in 12 games. 5th at running back. 764 rushing yards, 3rd, and 3 rushing touchdowns, 9th. I think this might be the best wide receiver core that Lamar Jackson has ever had. They have Rashad Master Bateman, who's a little bit banged up right now. They have Odell Beckham Jr., they have Zay Flowers, and they have Mark Andrews. Now, the head coach of the team is Todd Monken. They're going to be looking to throw the ball at a higher clip. I know that might scare some people. They're going to be throwing the ball more. Lamar makes his money on the ground. Well, they're still going to have Lamar run the ball. What I'm saying is I think they're just not going to run the ball as much with Dobbins if he ends up showing up, or Gus Edwards. And again, to anyone who thinks Lamar just can't throw the ball, he ranked 9th in QBR last year and 2nd in true passer rating. The full potential of Lamar Jackson is the quarterback one in fantasy football, jumping above Hurts, jumping above Mahomes, jumping above Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson has the toolkit, and now he has the offensive coordinator as well as the weapons to do it. I think Lamar Jackson has the upside to be a league winner, and I would be shocked if he didn't end up being a league winner. Before we do move on into the next league winner, though, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play fantasy football, best ball this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft. There's no waivers, there's no trades, and there's no setting your lineup. There's no in-season management. At the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. And they have the biggest fantasy football contest ever. Best Ball Mania 4, $25 to enter, 150 max entries, $3 million to first place, $15 million in total prizes. Now, if you don't want to enter into a big tournament like that, they're going to have smaller tournaments like the Puppy, the Pomeranian, that are small entry fees like $3 or $5. They also have basically a normal league, but it's best ball. You versus 11 other people with as low of a buy-in as $3. The first 2 places make money. So if this sounds like fun to you, please make sure that you check out the link in the video description for Underdog Fantasy, or use promo code Notorious for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit $100, they give you an additional $150, additional $50, $25, and additional $25. So back on into things. We now move to my 5th league winner, Christian Watson, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers. Underdog ADP, wide receiver 21 at pick 41.3. I have seen that in a lot of these mock drafts I'm doing, not my regular drafts on Underdog, my mock drafts, Christian Watson isn't this 4th round sought upon option like he is on Underdog. He falls sometimes into the 5th, even the 6th round. And I think that is because there is this stink thrown onto the Green Bay Packers. There is this bubble around the Packers that scares people, and that's because of Jordan Love. They are worried that Jordan Love is not going to be the second coming of Rodgers. He's not going to be the Brett Favre, right, having 2 great quarterbacks in a row for the Packers. They think 3rd time's not the charm. This guy is going to be an absolute schlub. Now, I want to remind you guys that Aaron Rodgers last year wasn't the same Aaron Rodgers that we were used to over the last couple of years, right, where he's back-to-back MVP. Now, I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers sucked complete and utter ass and was a bad quarterback, but it wasn't the same Rodgers we're used to. Watson ranked 41st in target accuracy at the wide receiver position. When you look at his stats, they aren't the best, but when you put the stats and you actually think about how the games went, you will quickly realize that Christian Watson has the upside to be a league winner, a top 10 wide receiver. He was wide receiver 40 in PPR and 33 in PPR points per game, tied with DJ Moore, Al Lazard, and Mecole Hardman Jr. But when you only take into account the games where he was really playing, right, where he was getting 60+% of the snaps, 7 games sample size, wide receiver 8 in PPR points per game. Now, again, the stats aren't mouth-watering. You're not going to salivate listening to this. 14 games played with 11 starts, 65 targets, 65th, 41 receptions, 64th, 611 receiving yards, 52nd, but he scored 9 total touchdowns, 4th at wide receiver. And he had a 102.5% true catch rate, 7th at wide receiver. This is going to be an offense that heavily relies on Christian Watson. Christian Watson is a focal point of this offense. I know they have Jaden Reed. I know they have Romeo Dobbs, but neither of those guys are Christian Watson. Christian Watson is a legitimate NFL wide receiver one. And I think this is going to be something just like with Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? He's hot. He's on fucking fire, NBA Jam style to end the 2021 season. And then people are kind of doubting him going into 2022. People are unsure if that guy is a one-hit wonder or if this guy is a legitimate NFL number one receiver. This guy is a legitimate fantasy football option. Same thing is happening with Watson. Watson puts together a bunch of solid games towards the end of the season, but now people think maybe it was Fugazi or maybe Jordan Love is going to be terrible. Now, as long as Jordan Love isn't the nut-low NFL quarterback, Christian Watson is going to be just fine. He has legitimate talent. Just throw on the tape. You can see the speed from Watson is incredible. His hands are amazing. And I think Christian Watson, again, is going to be a league winner in 2023. So don't fret Jordan Love being there. Don't panic. Invest in the talent of Christian Watson, and it will pay dividends. Moving to number 6, my number 6 league winner, Tyler Lockett in my pocket. Skirt of the Seattle Seahawks, underdog ADP, wide receiver 33 at pick 62.4. He was the wide receiver 13 in PPR last season and the wide receiver 17 in PPR points per game, tied with Devontae Smith and Amari Cooper. Now, obviously, there is now a great addition to this offense in Jackson Smith-Njigba, right? And that is what is kind of suffocating Tyler Lockett's ADP and potentially his value. But what I want you guys to understand and put into consideration is that despite the fact that Tyler Lockett is getting a little bit older, maybe JSN actually opens the door for more targets for Lockett. Now the defense has to worry about Metcalf, Lockett, and JSN. And I think that Tyler Lockett might make it out of there scot-free. And where he is going makes me incredibly more confident in drafting him. If he was going up at the tippy top of the fucking draft like DK Metcalf, there would be reasons to hit the button and say it's DEFCON 5, wee-woo, 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 alarms everywhere, right? But he's coming off the board as the wide receiver 33 at pick 62. He was the wide receiver 13 last year and 17 in PPR points per game. I still do not believe that Geno Smith is really all that great of a quarterback, but it's a situation where it would be mission impossible to fail because of all the weapons there. 117 targets for Lockett last year in 16 games, number 22 at wide receiver. 84 receptions, number 14. 1,033 receiving yards, number 19. And 9 total touchdowns, 4th. He was 18th in dominator rating, 5th in target separation, 5th in route win rate, and 5th in win rate versus man. There is another thought process you could have about the situation. That is, while JSN was highly regarded going into the 2023 NFL draft, maybe he's just locked behind Metcalf and Lockett. Maybe it takes him a very long time to overcome that, to potentially become the number 2 target on this team. And we saw last year, Metcalf have these trials and tribulations, but Lockett was a lot better of a player last year when you look at Lockett's stats versus Metcalf. I know Lockett is not going to be consistent. He's not going to be that guy that you throw into your lineup every single week and it's like wrapping a condom around your team. But what he does present is a lot of upside. He presents multiple potentially top 8, top 5 performances on the season. Now, is every single week, is he going to be like T. Higgins, finishing as wide receiver 10 through 16 every single week? Fuck no, baby. But will he have that upside, that firecracker that you throw into your lineup with the upside to smash, to win you your week? He 100% has that, and that is what I am looking for in the middle rounds of drafts. And again, if something was to happen to Metcalf or JSN, knock on wood, Lockett could legitimately be a weekly top 15, 16 option, and that's exactly what you're looking for when you're drafting him as wide receiver 33. You don't need him to be the wide receiver 5 for him to be considered a league winner because of how much deeper down the draft board he goes. Moving to player number 7, we got another wide receiver, and that is my boy. I want a bad bitch, Jordan Addison Ray of the Minnesota Vikings, underdog ADP wide receiver 37 at pick 71.2. Obviously, Adam Thielen got shipped off to Carolina. I think Addison is the clear number 2 wide receiver. Now, if you look at the depth chart, don't be looking at depth charts right now. Every single depth chart is as fugazi as it gets. Bijan Robinson is the number 3 running back on the Falcons depth chart. Jordan Addison is not a top 2 wide receiver. He's listed behind KJ Osborne. Do you remember Justin Jefferson's rookie season? Justin Jefferson wasn't listed as a starting wide receiver, and he took defenses to the fucking Wabbit farm like they were Lenny in Of Mice and Men, and they got sent straight to heaven. Jordan Addison is incredibly legit. Remember last year? Adam Thielen ran 621 routes, which ranked second at wide receiver. It's 36.5 per game. This is an offense that wants to throw the ball at an incredibly high rate, and that's because their defense is awful. Their defense is sleeping with the fishes. So Jordan Addison is going to be given a lot of opportunities to catch the ball. Again, I know Thielen wasn't the best last year, but Kirk Cousins, another guy that a lot of people, just like Goff, they throw stones at him, they make fun of him, the new nightmare, this, that, and the other thing. We saw last year, Thielen was 12th in target accuracy. So that just completely destroys the Kirk Cousins is an absolute garbage can narrative. Again, Jordan Addison was a first-round pick. He's not the biggest guy ever. He's 5'11", 173 pounds, but he doesn't need to be fucking 6'9", 7'5". I don't know how tall Shaquille O'Neal is, but you get what I mean. He doesn't need to be this huge monster Calvin Johnson out there to succeed in the Vikings offense. Put up good numbers last year as a 20-year-old at USC, 11 games played, 49 receptions on 84 targets, 875 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, and a 70.2% catch rate. Again, if you've never seen Thielen play in college at USC, you take my word for it. This guy was really solid. Now he is put into what I would describe as basically the perfect position for a rookie wide receiver to succeed. Obviously, he doesn't have Mahomes or Josh Allen or Burrow, whoever you think the best quarterback is in the NFL, throwing him the ball. But I don't think he needs that in such a pass-heavy offense. Again, wide receiver 37, that seems egregiously low. And we all know he's fast, right? Bro was clocked going 155 in his car, seemingly running away from the cops like O.J. Simpson. Moving now to player number 8 here, Zay Flowers, wide receiver of the Baltimore Ravens, underdog ADP, wide receiver 41 at pick 83.3, another rookie wide receiver. ESPN's Jamison Hensley believes that Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. are solidifying themselves as the top 2 options in the Ravens offense. Rashad Master Bateman, like I was talking about a little bit earlier with Lamar, is out dealing with foot issues. So there's a really good shot that Flowers might mess around in his rookie year and be the number 1 wide receiver in a Todd Monken, more pass-heavy Baltimore Ravens offense, and he has been turning heads at the training camp for the Baltimore Ravens. He was the 22nd overall pick in the draft, and he was the 3rd wide receiver off the board following JSN and Quentin Johnston. He played all 4 seasons at Boston College, with his sophomore season being his breakout year. 12 games played last year, 78 receptions on 130 targets, 1,077 receiving yards, 12 receiving touchdowns. He had a 29.6% target share, which is a lot, right? He was the biggest part, basically, of the Boston College offense, and a 60% catch rate. This is a situation that I want to believe. Again, I think that with the Ravens offense, week in and week out, unless you have Mark Andrews, you're truly not going to have safety, right? It's not like Zay Flowers. At least I don't think Zay Flowers will be this super safe option without trials and tribulations weekly. There's going to be games where Zay Flowers smashes. There's going to be games where Zay Flowers smashes you directly in the ass without the use of loop, right? It's going to be like that. But there's also still a realm of possibilities where maybe Bateman is just messed up all season. Maybe Odell is just this kind of red zone threat, not a huge target in this offense when they're driving down the field. So Zay Flowers, with the speed he possesses in an offense like the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, again, a guy that a lot of people say can't throw, but he really can. We've seen big shootout games for the Ravens in the past. Defense isn't the greatest. I think I want to have pieces of these rookie wide receivers. They're super fun to pick because, again, they're not coming super high off the board. It's not like you have to draft them in the 4th round. Get them much later, falling down the draft board, and there's just so much untapped upside with these rookie wide receivers. Speaking of rookies, We got Tank Bigsby, number 9 league winner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, underdog ADP running back 44 at pick 133. Now, if you've watched a lot of my mock draft videos, this might sound like beating a dead horse, but I am all in on Tank Bigsby. I have pushed all the chips to the center of the table because I legitimately believe even if Travis Etienne plays the whole entire season, that there are going to be a lot of weeks we can throw Tank Bigsby into the lineup. I think that Tank Bigsby is going to carve a role into this offense. I think that Tank Bigsby, I saw a clip today of him running in a 70-yard touchdown. Now, obviously, I don't overreact over training camp clips, right? I'm not blowing my load on the screen looking at Twitter when Tank Bigsby does that. But there have been countless reports about Tank Bigsby being having a decent sized role in this offense. We saw Etienne, even though out of Clemson, everyone was clamoring about this pass catching upside, this, that, and the other thing, him being a great pass catcher. It just really hasn't been true at the NFL level. And Tank Bigsby is a bigger back, 6'2", Etienne, a little skinnier of a guy. So on the goal line, I think Tank's going to be getting the touches. So you got a guy with touchdown upside, where he's going to be catching passes, with a running back who isn't necessarily trending in the most positive direction. I'm not fully out on Etienne. I'm just not in love with drafting him. I think this is a great situation for Tank because, again, just like we talked about with Calvin Ridley, this is an offense that you are going to want pieces of. This is going to be a ferocious offense like a bear rolling off some cocaine. He played in 3 years at Auburn with over 800 yards in all seasons. He played behind literally a dog shit offensive line, the 3rd lowest graded run blocking line in the SEC, and he still averaged 5.5 yards per carry, and he averaged 4.2 rushing yards after contact, which ranked 7th. This is a guy that should be able to do it at the NFL level. He's a guy that I talked up after he was selected, and I'm still on board now. I think his ADP is going to keep moving up, and if something happened to Travis Etienne, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, I think Bigsby could be a top 12 running back weekly. Now, moving to the end, the finale, we got Dalton Schultz, tight end of the Houston Texans, underdog ADP, tight end 14 at pick 143.1. Now, the fact that he's coming off the board at tight end 14 is just fucking insane. Dalton Schultz has the same exact upside as guys like Evan Ingram who are going ahead of him. Now, again, I love the Jaguars offense, but I feel like Evan Ingram might kind of be the odd man out there, the guy that's cucked out of there, whereas I think Dalton Schultz is entering into a situation in Houston where he might be the number 2 receiving option on the team. He was tight end 10 last year at Dallas, 9 in PPR points per game. I was all over Schultz last year. He definitely disappointed, but he wasn't a bust necessarily because he still finished top 12. He just wasn't that potential top 3 tight end like I thought he could potentially reach in Dallas. But again, now he's in Houston in a situation where the wide receiver room is definitely a lot more cloudy. Nico Collins, they have John Mechie, but outside of that, they don't really have a lot of great options. 15 games played last year for Schultz, 89 targets, 7th at tight end, 57 receptions, 11th at tight end, 577 receiving yards, 10th at tight end, 5 total touchdowns, 8th. He was 9th in true catch rate, 13th in yards per team pass attempt. Again, it's all about the situation, and we're not talking about Mike from the Jersey Shore. I think that this is a good landing spot for Schultz. I think that the fact that their quarterback isn't Davis Money Mills anymore and it's CJ Stroud gives Dalton Schultz even further added upside. The tight end room behind him is very bad. None of those guys can hold Schultz's jockstrap, and I am elated. I am excited to continue to keep drafting Dalton Schultz super late because of the upside that he possesses, and again, because of the role I believe he has, which is a strong role in this Texans offense. It's a hard role, like what I put my fucking bacon, egg, and cheese on. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think about all these league winners. I love you guys all so much. Check out Underdog Fantasy, link in the video description. Hope you all have a good one, and as always, good boy.